Is this what your bench looks like? And then you try to organize your dies and they look like this. How about that? All right, so I got a new product I want to show you guys today. It is our full length sizing die, which is headspace micrometer adjustable. Let me show you how it works. The bushing, which has the shoulder built in, goes in, obviously, shoulder down. This is a 306. It says 6.5 PRC because this is a 6.5 PRC die body, but because this is for my 7 PRCW, I'm using a 306 bushing. So with our system, with our die, you can have the same body. Let's say you have a 6.5 PRC, you use a smaller bushing than that. You have a 7 PRCW, all you do is change the bushing. You use the same die. Let's say you want to play around with a Wildcat and you want to do a 6mm. Well, change the bushing, same body. So that's how that works. So next we have our decapping pin. You have a set screw right there. You loosen the set screw, you adjust the depth on that decapping pin. However, they're preset, so you shouldn't have to do much. Drop it in, and then you install the cap. If you want to do it without the decapping pin, simply remove the decapping pin, but you're still going to need that spacer. Put that in there, put the cap on there, and advance it all the way until it lines up, the 10 lines up with the hash marks. You will notice that we have 3 scales on the die. On a coax, it doesn't matter because you can simply turn it wherever you want. However, if you have a conventional press, you never know where you're going to end up. So having 3 scales on the die should allow you to see where you're at regardless of where you end up. Our locking die, you will notice that it has a flat side right here and a domed side. You can see the more of a chamfer there. The reason for that is this side, the flat side, was machined on the exact same setup as the threads. So that's the side that we can guarantee that is perfectly perpendicular to the threads. So that's the side that you're going to use when locking down your die. So on a conventional press, you're going to want that flat side down because you're typically going to be tightening down that way. However, because the coax index is up here, we're going to flip this die upside down and we're going to put the flat side up. So the way you set this die up is quite simple. You put the die in there, bring the ram up, and screw the die down until you touch the press, the show holder. Then you give it a slight, more of a turn, and then you snug down the set screws. Let me make sure it's touching. Nope, needs a little more. There. See how the handle doesn't go all the way down? There. That's a good starting point. I'm going to start right there. I'm just going to snug the screws down. We have 2 set screws, 90 degrees apart. Make sure you get them both. Now you don't have to get crazy tight on them. Just keep them snug. And now we're going to take a piece of brass. This brass has been freshly annealed. It's fire brass from my 7 PRCW. Before we do anything to the brass, we're going to take it over to the rifle and make sure that it indeed needs to have that shoulder bumped. This brass has been fired twice, so I'm pretty sure the shoulder needs to be bumped back. However, we need to verify that. The firing pin has been removed, and I do not have an ejector on my bolt. So if you have an ejector on yours, it may be a good idea to remove it. Put the brass in there. As you can see, the bolt handle does not close. That tells us that we need to bump that shoulder back. Let's measure it, see where we're at. And we are at 1.594. Measure a second one. Same thing, 1.594. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the first one, and we're going to keep it at 10 on the die. We just want to make sure that we have the die set so that we can bump enough. Now, this die is pretty snug at the base. There's a lot of users that are having clickers with their PRCs, so our die is pretty snug at the bottom. There's also 2 chambers out there. There's a 532 chamber at the 200 line and a 535. This die will work for both. I recommend they use a really good lube. This is die wax because, like I said, it's pretty snug at the bottom. So let's size this one, see where we end up. We just want to make sure that we're pushing the shoulder back. and we're at 8.9. So we pushed it back 5 thousandths. Take this piece of brass, mark it, whatever, so that you can use it for a fowler, because you got too much headspace. Actually, we need to verify that. The bolt should drop on that, and it does. So we know we have too much headspace, meaning we bumped the shoulder back too much. That's okay. That tells us the die is set up properly. Now we're gonna back this micrometer back. I'm gonna back it off all the way to 0, because I wanna creep up to the final headspace. Again, die wax. Make sure you get that base, the shoulder, and the neck. Okay, let's measure this one again. 94.5. It actually grew a little because we're sizing the base, right? So it actually pushed the shoulder forward a bit. That's fine. So we're at 0. We're gonna go to 2. Size it. So 93.5. We're gonna go another 2. To 4. Size it again. 92.5. We started 94, so we got 1.5 thousandths of bump right now. Now, we've been bumping the same piece of brass. So I'm gonna, typically, you would wanna go 0.5 thousandths. However, we bumped the same piece of brass more than once already. So I'm gonna go a full thousandth, just because to allow for the spring back on brass that we're only gonna bump once. So I'm gonna go to 5, setting 5. See, 91.5, that's fine. It's a little snug still. I mean, it's closing, but it's falling about halfway. We're gonna advance it one more. Sometimes that comparator doesn't match up perfectly with your chamber, so let's see where we're at. 91, so we bumped 1 thousandth. Let's see how it fits on our chamber. It's going almost all the way down. For my preference, I'm gonna give it one more. Just the way I like my brass to fit. You can split the half, but I'm gonna give it one more. So we're gonna go to 7. Okay, check it. 90.5. That's how I like my brass to fit. Keep in mind, heat, everything else will contribute to this. So, plus there's spring back. While the brass sits there, it'll tend to spring back slightly. So that one's done. Let's do another one. See where we end up. $91. Let's check it. Again, it's almost perfect. Keep in mind, the other brass, we bumped it multiple times. So I'm gonna give this one 1 more thousandth. So we're at 8 on the die now. And to me, that's gonna be perfect fit. Now, I'm gonna just move on to another one because I bumped that one twice. Now, if that's how you do it, oftentimes people do, run it one time, turn it 90 degrees. If that's how you do it, then you need to set up your headspace to account for the 2 strokes. I like to do it in 1, so I want to make sure that it fits. To me, that's perfect right there. So that's where I would leave it for my personal use. Now, let's say you have 2 different rifles that have 2 different headspaces, slightly different. This one, we ended up at 8. So all you have to do is write down that setting for this rifle, setting 8, and you know that your brass is going to be sized properly. As brass ages, the spring back changes, especially if you're not annealing. So right now we're at setting 8. As the brass ages, you may need to go to setting 9 or setting 10. If you run out of room, loosen the die lock ring, screw the die down a little more and start over. But For me, because I anneal every time, I got 2,000ths there. I should have plenty, no problem. Now let's measure this brass. This is, we got some fire brass here. Let's go to 200 line. That's about where that line is. We're gonna measure there. I know my chamber, like I said, it's 535. So fire brass is 534.5. That makes sense. Now let's see what our size brass measures. 531. So even if you have a 532 chamber, this die will fix your issues. Now, because this die is pretty snug at the base, if you're using a Dillon 750 with an auto drive, it may not have enough power to size your brass in one pass. So for that, I recommend that you get one of our mandrel dies. Our mandrel dies size the base as well. So what I do when I use my Dillon 750 with an auto drive, I get a universal decapping die on the first station, and then I install a mandrel die. No mandrel in it, simply so I can size the base. Don't forget to lube the brass. And that's gonna give it a first squeeze in preparation for the full length sizing die. I do that in one station. On my second station, I have my full length sizing die on the first station. On the second station, I have one of our neck brushes, just to brush the necks. On the third station, I have a mandrel die with a 282 mandrel. That's for my 7mm. And then on my next station, I actually have another mandrel die with the same mandrel. I personally have found that if I run a mandrel twice, I get better consistency on the necks. The following station, I use a brush again, brush the necks once more, and then the die, and the brass is complete. If you are having clickers, you may need to use our die in conjunction with one of our mandrel dies, because they will both size the base. Keep in mind, you don't want to get that base, you don't want to let that base get away from you. This brass is amazing, it'll last forever, but that base is pretty hard, and if you let it get away from you, pretty much you can throw the brass away because you're never going to bring it back. So that's the reason our die is snug at the base. We also have our mandrel dies. Keep that base in check or you're going to run into problems. So what if you have a custom Wildcat and you have a sizing reamer and you want to make your own die? Well, we're also going to introduce our die blanks. These are made out of 303 stainless, so they're going to be harder than your conventional 416. Also, we put a hex head on here. When you use a conventional press, I've done it, and I know you have too. Typically, you take pliers. Once that die is locked down, you take pliers to that ring and you loosen it. It makes a mess. Our locking rings, you can take a 3/16 punch, stick it in them holes, and then that's how you can tighten it. Or you can take a socket, put on the head and screw it in or out. Also, our dies are bored. We bored that hole 1 inch from the base. So your gunsmith, whoever's making your die, are going to be able to indicate this die perfectly true because that hole was bored at the same time that the OD was machined. So that's going to ensure that this die is running perfectly true. The die is drilled all the way through, however, only 1 inch is bored. Once you indicate your die, we recommend that you drill and pre-bore because again, this is 303 stainless. You're gonna end up with a much better product, but it's gonna be slightly harder to machine. However, it is not overly hard. They will come with a lock ring. We will also offer nitriding service. So once you have your die completed, and if you want to have it nitrided, just like our full length sizing dies, and you can use our spec on the nitride, then we can do that for you on your full length sizing die. So you'll be able to send it back if you want to do that. If not, you can simply polish it and they'll work pretty well, but obviously they'll work better if you nitride it. Our dies are going to be available for pre-order starting today, and we're going to offer other chamberings like 6BR, Dasher, BRA, 6GT, 308, 7 RSOM, 300 WSM, and many, many more. Go to our website, place your order, and please, again, allow 4 to 6 weeks for delivery. And thank you very much for your support. Keep them centered.
Tonight I'm feeling me, gonna make an ugly scene. Tonight